On stage, in front of an expectant crowd, Tamara, a young black woman, was humiliated by President Trump, who not only destroyed her dream, but, with words full of racism, told her she had no right to be there. He forced her to play a broken violin in front of everyone. What happened when she decided not to give up and turn that painful moment into a lesson for the world? The truth is not what you expect. A young black woman named Tamara had always dreamed of being a violinist. Since she was a child, her fingers caressed the strings of her violin, which had been her closest companion, her refuge, her way of speaking when words weren't enough. She grew up in a humble neighborhood, where her ability to play the violin made her stand out at school. But life wasn't always fair. The taunts and prejudices about her skin color started spilling over from her school environment into her daily life. Discrimination wasn't a story someone told her. It was a reality she fought against every day. One day, without warning, an event that seemed like a golden opportunity for Tamara appeared. A talent recital organized by an influential businessman and public figure, a man known across the country for his aggressive and divisive rhetoric, Donald Trump. It wasn't just a music event, but a showcase where the best talents would have the chance to stand out in front of a powerful crowd. Tamara saw it as a chance to change her life. Her mother warned her that the environment wasn't always the most inclusive, that people, especially those who believed they had absolute power, wouldn't give her the chance to be known. They would just judge her without reason. But Tamara, with hope alive in her heart, didn't think twice. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, she thought. When she arrived at the event, the room was filled with lights, cameras, and an expectant crowd. Everything seemed like a dream until her eyes met Donald Trump's. He briefly glanced at her, a look full of indifference, as if because of the color of her skin, she didn't deserve to be there. Tamara was called to the stage, her violin in hand. The microphone was turned on, and the music began. At first, the strings of her violin produced a perfect melody, but suddenly, something broke. The sound of the violin stopped flowing smoothly, and a metallic screech cut through the harmony. Trump, from his seat in the front row, not only noticed it, but took advantage of it. With an arrogant smile, he stood up and began pointing his finger. "What is this? A joke?" he said loudly, so everyone in the room could hear. Tamara's gaze clouded for a moment. Her violin was broken. The internal structure had cracked without warning. She knew she could give up. If she did, it would be the end of everything she had worked for. But Trump didn't let it go. "You have a broken violin and still dare to play in front of me. Did you really think a black person could participate in this event if their only function is to be slaves?" he said, his voice full of sarcasm and contempt. The room, once full of admiration for her talent, now transformed into a stage of humiliation. Tamara felt the weight of her race, her condition, the broken violin, but above all, she felt the weight of the expectation society had placed on her shoulders. "A broken violin is what you are, Tamara, and that's all you will ever be. That's your destiny, African," Trump added with a mocking laugh, looking at the crowd. The pain of that humiliation struck her like lightning. Her heart beat loudly. The desire to cry overtook her, but something inside her kept her firm. The murmurs in the room grew louder, and Tamara's face tightened. Was this the opportunity of her life? Was this how her dreams were supposed to end? Ashamed, in front of everyone, unable to do anything? No. Without thinking any further, Tamara placed the violin on her shoulder, and with her eyes filled with fury and determination, she continued playing with even more passion. Despite the strings no longer sounding the same, she began to make music with what was left of her violin. Every bow, every strike on the strings became a challenge. She wasn't playing to impress anymore. She wasn't playing to gain anyone's approval. She was playing for herself, to show her heart, her history, and the people who still believe her skin was an obstacle, that she didn't need the perfection of her violin. She didn't need the world to validate her. Some expected her to crumble, to drop her violin, to give up in the face of mockery and humiliation. But what happened was something unexpected. The broken music that Tamara played resonated with an unusual strength. Her notes, though out of tune, touched a pain so deep that no one could avoid feeling it. The music was imperfect, but the message was clear. No matter how broken the violin, the will to move forward cannot be destroyed. The room fell into a dense silence, as if the air itself had frozen. Tamara felt the weight of the gazes, not only from the attendees, but from Donald Trump himself, who watched her from his seat with an expression of superiority. Every word he had said earlier echoed in her mind, but something inside her ignited. "A broken violin for a broken girl," he had said, with a cruel smile, as if her very existence were a flaw, as if her skin color was something that needed to be corrected. The humiliation was in every gesture, in every word that came from his mouth. The businessman's words were filled with racism, a racism so subtle and deep that many people didn't even realize the damage they were causing. "What are you going to do, girl?" he had said, mocking her presence on that stage, as if she didn't deserve to be there, as if her music had no value because she didn't fit the image that he and many others had of what an artist should be. "You have no idea what you're doing. I'll let you come here, you." The sound of the broken violin became a symbol of her struggle. The strings didn't sound the same, but that didn't stop her. Each bow of her hand, though imperfect, was full of courage. In her mind, everything sped up. The discrimination she had faced since she was young, the malicious comments she had heard throughout her life, the times her ability was questioned just because of the color of her skin. "Black girl, who do you think you are to be on this stage?" Trump's words still echoed in her ears, as if merely being there was an offense. But something was unleashed inside her. It was as if all the hate that had built up in her life, everything, the contempt she had felt simply for being who she was, began to transform into strength. Music became her form of resistance. Every defiant note she played, despite the broken strings, returned to her a bit of what had been taken from her. It was not just about playing. It was about making her voice heard, about being recognized, not for what others wanted her to be, but for what she truly was, an artist, a strong woman, a young girl with dreams, regardless of the color of her skin. The crowd that had once looked at her with disdain now fell silent. Some exchanged glances, bewildered by the courage Tamara showed in continuing to play, while most of them couldn't grasp the profound message her fingers were weaving. For Tamara, this performance was not just a stage. It was a statement to those who still thought that a person's race or origin determined their worth. Trump watched in silence, now speechless, but his gaze, still filled with contempt, remained. "I will not give up," Tamara thought as the notes resonated, and even though her violin no longer produced perfect music, what she played was much more powerful. She wasn't just facing a battle with a broken violin, but with a system that had underestimated her, that had wanted to see her fail, but that would not succeed in doing so. The room was still, but Tamara knew something had changed. Maybe it wouldn't be applause she would receive at the end, but something much more important. She had earned the dignity of doing what she loved, of fighting against prejudice, of keeping her identity intact. In that moment, she knew her music was not just a refuge, but also a resistance. And despite the racism, despite the mockery and attempts to silence her, Tamara never stopped playing. The image of Tamara playing her broken violin in the middle of that luxurious room, surrounded by figures of power, quickly went from being just a painful memory to becoming a viral phenomenon. A mobile phone, which had been recording from the beginning of the performance, captured the moment when Trump, standing and mocking, interrupted her performance. The video began circulating immediately on social media, starting with a few comments, but soon the outrage grew like a snowball. In the video, it was clear how Trump, with his dismissive attitude, had not only humiliated Tamara publicly, but had also attacked her for her race and her ability, of verbal violence disguised as superiority. "What are you doing here, girl? Aren't you ashamed to play a broken violin in front of all of us?" His words were clear, cruel, and the laughter accompanying his interruption made his contempt evident. The video didn't take long to be shared thousands of times. At first, many didn't understand the impact it might have. However, as hours passed, Tamara's story began to spread across the country and the world. The comments about the humiliation she had suffered multiplied. Social media users began denouncing Trump's racist behavior, pointing out the arrogance of his treatment of a talented young woman who, despite being despised, did not give in to the pressure. Hashtag #TamaraNoEsterota became a trending topic. Messages of support came from all corners, even from those who had never directly been affected by racism or discrimination. Public outrage overflowed, and soon hashtags like hashtag Justicia para Tamara and hashtag Voces contra Racismo emerged. The voice of internet users was powerful, and Tamara's story touched hearts around the world. The young woman, initially bewildered by the storm that erupted from the video, watched as her life changed in a matter of days. What began as a public humiliation transformed into a stage of visibility she had never imagined. Interviews, Press articles and messages of support from public figures flooded her social media. Words of encouragement came from artists, musicians, activists, and even politicians, all praising her strength and bravery for continuing to play despite the humiliation. And it wasn't only the internet that supported her. A television channel invited her to appear on a live show, where Tamara, with a firm and clear voice, recounted what had happened. In her speech, she didn't focus on Trump's figure, but on her love for music and what it meant to her. "Music is my way of being free," she said, her voice cracking for a moment. "And no matter how many times they try to break me, I won't let them silence me." But it wasn't just the people's support that made Tamara's video transcend. It was the pure truth of the story that touched the whole world. The racism she endured, the condescending attitude of someone who had the power to shatter her confidence, awakened something in many people. The desire for society to work together to eliminate these attitudes and behaviors. "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger," Tamara repeated to herself. And as she saw the video of her broken performance turn into an anthem of dignity and courage, she knew that although her violin had been damaged, her music had reached more hearts than ever before. The scandal over Tamara's video didn't take long to reach the farthest corners of the world. The pressure on Donald Trump grew day by day as the media spread his public humiliation. Social media, which had initially been a platform of support for Tamara, began demanding a response from the president. The comments and messages of indignation were relentless, and the damage to his reputation seemed irreversible. Finally, after days of silence, Trump called a press conference to address the situation. In front of the cameras, visibly pressured, he sat at his desk with a serious expression. The audience waited eagerly to hear what he might say to calm the uproar he had caused himself. "I want to start by publicly apologizing," he said, in a voice more controlled than many expected. "I recognize that my words towards young Tamara were inappropriate and unacceptable. It was not my intention to humiliate her, and I deeply regret if my comments caused pain. There is no excuse for what I said." The words were slow, measured, as if he were speaking to calm the crowd and perhaps restore a damaged image. The president continued, "Racism has no place in our society, and I am the first to condemn it. Racism has no place. My behavior does not reflect the values we should promote as a nation." The tone of his apology was what one would expect from someone in his position, politically correct, but many knew its sincerity was in question. However, what was clear was that the damage had already been done. Tamara's story had deeply resonated with millions of hearts, and nothing could erase what she now represented. A young woman who, despite the humiliation, had held her head high and played with all her being. While Trump issued his apology, Tamara, on her part, was already back home, surrounded by her family and friends. The weight of the situation began to lift. She had gained something much more important than any official apology: her voice, her place in the world, and the respect she had earned through her own strength. Trump's apology, while intended to end the controversy, did not change what Tamara had proven. Her story of resilience continued to be shared from all corners of the world, and she, with her violin and her dreams intact, knew that music, like her voice, could not be silenced. And so, the humiliation of a single moment transformed into the resurgence of an artist determined to challenge all expectations and prove that dignity cannot be broken, no matter how many times they try to destroy it.